So I'll be jumping straight into this video, and I'll leave a timestamp in the description down below so you can pick the certain part that you want to begin at. However, I just wanted to quickly throw some updates out there because I felt like it's not really worth a video on its own, and I should just mention it here. However, because you are an MVP subscriber and part of the best community on YouTube, obviously, you're going to watch this video all the way through regardless. It was nice meeting so many of you. I got to sign like way too many different firewall dragons and Farfas, and yeah, it was absolutely insane. I can't wait for an American event one day and get to meet all the people from that side of the world that I guess I'll never see unless I go there myself. So hopefully that will happen one day. Now, I scheduled a lot of videos in time for the YCS while I was away, and I expected to just get back to work when I came back. However, there was the fact that we missed our last bus, so we ended up having to walk to the airport for 2 hours in below freezing weather, and it was across some dark German countryside, and I forgot to bring a hoodie, so I got sick. So I've been pretty much in bed for like the last 2 days, and I don't know if I sound terrible, but I'm a lot worse than I sound, I think. So yeah, I'm sorry for like the lack of content, I guess, or whatever, but hopefully we'll begin and start our routine as normal soon. I'll be streaming at some point this weekend, hopefully. I get no promises there because, well, yeah, I'm still feeling really terrible, and sitting at my computer for quite a number of hours on end might not be the best thing for my health, but we'll see how it goes. So I got quite a lot of new subscribers and stuff over the Bochum weekend, and I guess that's to be expected when you're uploading all the top deck profiles from the event. So it's nice to see like lots of new numbers and shit. I'd recommend the Inside the Mind Off series if you've never watched any of my videos before. They're pretty funny. Table 500 is a laugh as well, so you should have a look through those if you like. Now I'm going to come forward here and just make a straight up bold crazy prediction and say that I think that this format, I don't know what we're going to call it. Normally formats have weird crazy names like hat format and mono mermail and perfect circle, and I don't even know what perfect circle is. Like I think it has a monarch card and like a card trooper, or maybe that's troop dupes. I don't know. I feel like FTK is a bit of a false advertising because that's not really what this format, well, I mean, it could be, it's still young, but at least based on the last tournament, it's hard to say that this is FTK format. So my basic bold prediction is going to be that I think that this format is going to completely, not really erase, but it's going to trump hat format as the most memorable diverse format in Yu-Gi-Oh! I can't think of any event in the history of this game that has had 12 unique different decks in the top cut of a YCS. Basically, I think that this format is going to go down in history as potentially, hopefully we'll see, depending on how healthy it turns out, maybe one of the best ever, one of the most beloved ever. Now, generally, most players in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community prefer varied and diverse formats, and that's probably a video in and of itself one day as well, which I might do at some point, the idea of tier 0 versus varied formats. I think that this one, and I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Players in general really like diverse and varied formats, and this YCS Bochum that's just passed by has managed to, I guess, well, I wouldn't say it's proven that, but it's kind of exemplified this idea that all these different decks are able to take part in an event and be able to get really far, and for fuck's sake, even like win the whole thing. Like, who would have thought World Chalice was going to win that one? Now, whenever someone refers to something as hat, or refers to like a certain, I don't know, like maybe their locals as like a hat format locals or like a hat format style event, generally what that means and what that adjective is trying to refer to is to say that this format or that thing is just really diverse. There's so many different decks or playstyles and mechanics being utilized within that deck or within that locals or within that regional, within that format. And this format, I think, is very reminiscent of hat in the sense that, yes, we do have a handful of generically good, powerful cards, like the hand's artifacts or trap tricks. In this case, we have various different forms of hand traps, which, in a sense, are really just power creep trap cards. So they're very similar in that sense, in that you could just kind of put these very powerful staple cards into pretty much any deck, and it feels like you're able to just get really far this format. I haven't done a huge amount of research or anything at all into this matter, but I cannot think of any event in this game's history that has ever managed to have 12 unique decks in the top cut. 11 to 12, like there's Pendulum and then there's Pendulum FTK, which I suppose aren't that different from each other, but I think that they're fairly unique and very different strategies from one another, very different playstyles. depending on, I guess, the side deck and stuff. But yeah, it's crazy to see just how many different decks have managed to top this one event. And I think that for the most part, if we look at something like the attendance of Bochum being record-breaking for European standards, I think that that's kind of shows like the game has new vitality in it. People are really interested in playing again. People are they think the format was like really cool. It seemed really exciting, and that's why so many people decided to fly and drive and train it across Europe and go to the biggest event in the history of European Yu-Gi-Oh! So I think it goes to show that generally the public and the players do prefer varied and different formats. And when we have this many different decks in a format, I think it's something that will eventually be record-breaking, which I guess is really the point of everything that I'm trying to say in this video. Is I think that this format will go down in history. Now, this is only event number 2, so I guess we'll have to wait till, I don't know, I suppose maybe like after the next 2 YCSs or something, before the next cert is released, and then deep into national season until the end of the season, we'll have to see, like, you know, how much will Flood, for example, impact this deck, or Layer how much it will impact this format, how much Layer of Darkness will impact this format. I'll just give you a quick rundown of the different decks that managed to top the event. So I didn't want to go through the Atlanta numbers because I feel like the first event of a new format is very sort of open and different, and it's like very undefined, so it's hard to kind of see like where it's going to go from there. But it was like half the meta there was like Magician, which I suppose is, you know, not really unsurprising. For Bochum, we have just over a quarter of the decks being Pendulum Magician in top 32. And remember, this is top 32. This isn't just representation. For representation, I mean, we can't even do a pie chart for that. Like, we just can't fit like every deck on that thing, you know? Shoutouts to Darren for losing to Crystron. Pendulum taking this many spots, I guess, is not really that surprising, but it's just crazy to see, like, every other deck that topped is basically just between an integer of 1 to 2 tops. Now, it just goes to show you how powerful Pendulum is, and I think that potentially with a ban on Astrograph will bring that deck completely in line and make it very fair, but not overpowered to, I think, where its position is right now. When we have Pendulum, naturally you're going to see a kind of big rise in the deck that best counters that. And I think that that's potentially True Draco and Trickstar, which I think is why they had such a good showing in the top cut of Bochum, was because they are probably the best decks geared towards taking down Pendulum Magician. But then again, it's not that hard to put D-Barrier and Strike into your deck, so who's to say that was really the case. Plus, on the other hand, whenever I spoke to people in Top Cut, I noticed that most of them were saying, like, yeah, I only played like 1 or 2 Magician, because just that was how varied and different the playing field was. Because while Magician got this many people in the Top Cut, there was nowhere near this amount of representation. The representation of the deck was actually very low for a meta deck, very low for like the best deck, really. I mean, it is the best deck. You know, it's hard to, when you have this many decks in Top Cut, and only one of them is taking a quarter of the spots, it is without the best deck and the strongest deck. So it's very unsurprising that they didn't come across that many, because there was not that many that entered. Now, True Draco took most of the next spots. Then let's just listen to this. Like, I'll list them off and just think about how crazy this is. After this, we have True Draco, then we have Trickstar, and then we have Pendulum FTK, which I suppose you maybe don't want to count Pendulum FTK and Pendulum as 2 different decks. But then we have 60 card Lightsworn, Mech Knight Invoked, Zephyra, Dino, Gemini FTK, World Chalice, Paleozoic, and Burning Abyss. That's 10 unique decks. Without FTK, that's 10 other decks. So 11 total, 11 to 12 total, depending on how you're looking at it. Unique decks in just the top cut. Not even like, think about all the crazy things that potentially made day 2. Think of all the crazy different decks that managed to get really far. Because, you know, not everyone is interested in the top cut decks, because yeah, it's cool that you topped with a deck and stuff, but some people just want to take a rogue deck and see, you know, how far can I get? And day 2 is a decent goal, and it's a decent obstacle for like a lot of decks. So think about all the crazy amount of just weird decks that made it to day 2. It's unbelievable just how many different decks there are this format that are completely viable and able to like even win a YCS. I haven't even touched upon World Chalice, but I've spoken for long enough, and I'd like to get your opinion on this format. Do you think that this format is as, you know, big as it's like as hat format is? Like, do you think that this is going to be as impactful to the game as hat format is? Do you think it's going to leave a mark on the game for as long as hat has? Let me know what you think down below in the comment section, and I'll see you next time.